Number 8. Oldsmobile 442 W30. The Oldsmobile 442 with the W30 engine option was the muscle car that buyers chose when they wanted the performance credentials of a Chevelle SS or a GTO, but preferred to announce it slightly more quietly. A mid-size Oldsmobile coupe with a factory ram air induction 455 cubic inch V8 that produced 370 horsepower and could cover the quarter mile in the high 13-second range at approximately 100 miles per hour. Period testers from Car and Driver and Motor Trend documented the W30 as one of the most effective performers in the American muscle segment, with the 455's torque delivery making it particularly accessible at a wide range of driving conditions. The 442 offered buyers a combination that its immediate competitors struggled to match simultaneously: genuine big block performance, available hardtop styling, and a price that the working-class family's budget could reach without extended financing. Oldsmobile sold the 442 through 1980, though the W30's real period of relevance ended with the 1974 model year. It is at number 8 because it was the muscle car people tended to keep, generating specific loyalty in a segment where most buyers moved on. Number 7. Plymouth Cuda. The Plymouth Cuda of 1970 was the car that Chrysler's engineers built for buyers who wanted the most performance available from any domestic manufacturer without paying exotic car prices. With the 426 Street Hemi as an option, producing 425 advertised horsepower from an engine that independent testing placed considerably higher, the Cuda represented access to technology that Chrysler had developed for NASCAR and NHRA competition and made available through Plymouth dealerships. Sales of the 426 Hemi Cuda were limited by the engine's cost and demands. Only 652 hardtops and 14 convertibles were produced with the Hemi in 1970. But the car's cultural presence extended far beyond its production numbers. By 1974, when Plymouth discontinued the Barracuda nameplate, the Cuda had established a legacy that its successors could not sustain without the performance that emissions regulations had removed. The Cuda is at number 7 not because it outsold its competitors, it didn't, and its sales disappointment is precisely why Chrysler kills it after 1974, but because the buyers who wanted one in 1970 and didn't buy one spent the rest of the decade thinking about what they passed up. Number 6. Dodge Challenger RT. The Dodge Challenger arrived in 1970 as Chrysler's entry into the pony car segment that Ford and Chevrolet had been competing in since 1964. It arrived late. By 1970, the segment's competitive window was already narrowing, but it arrived with a wider body, a longer wheelbase, and a range of engine options that gave buyers access to the 426 Hemi and the 440 six-pack in configurations that the Barracuda's platform could not accommodate as easily. The Challenger RT with the 440 Magnum produced 375 horsepower and ran the quarter mile in the mid-13-second range. The styling, long hood, pronounced rear haunches, available shaker hood scoop, placed it among the most visually commanding cars in the American market in 1970. Chrysler discontinued the Challenger after 1974, a casualty of the same regulatory and fuel economy pressures that were ending the entire performance segment. The Challenger is at number 6 not because it outsold its competitors, it didn't, and its sales disappointment is precisely why Chrysler killed it after 1974, but because the buyers who wanted one in 1970 and didn't buy one spent the rest of the decade thinking about what they passed up.
Number 5. Chevrolet Chevelle SS 454. The 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle SS with the LS6 454 cubic inch engine at 450 horsepower was one of the most desired muscle cars of the early 1970s. The car that felt genuinely extreme at a moment when extreme still meant something. Car and Driver documented a quarter mile of 13.8 seconds at 101.2 miles per hour, a figure that confirmed what the car looked like it was capable of. The LS6 option cost approximately $263 in 1970, a modest premium above the standard SS package that gave buyers access to an engine Chevrolet would never again offer in a mid-size production car. Emissions regulations reduced the 454's output in subsequent years to 425 horsepower in 1971 and then progressively lower, effectively ending the Chevelle SS 454's period of dominance by 1972. The Chevelle SS was discontinued after 1973, surviving for 4 seasons against regulatory headwinds that it was not designed to accommodate. It is at number 5 because the 1970 LS6 represented the most extreme production muscle car performance that Chevrolet ever documented, a figure that established a ceiling for the segment that the decade's regulations quickly began to lower. Number 4. Dodge Charger. The Dodge Charger was one of the most recognizable American performance cars throughout the 1970s, a nameplate that had been synonymous with muscle since 1966 and that remained present in showrooms and in American driveways even as the decade's regulations progressively softened what it could deliver. The 1970 Dodge Charger RT with the 426 Hemi, or the 446 pack, represented peak Charger performance, a full-size muscle car whose fastback roofline, tunneled rear window, and recessed grille gave it a visual identity that the decade's domestic competition could not approach. The Charger continued in production through 1978, becoming progressively more of a personal luxury car as the decade advanced, and less of the pure muscle that the 1970 RT had represented. The Charger is at number 4 because it combined early decade performance with a visual identity that a generation of buyers wanted in their driveways, and that a later television show confirmed had been the right answer all along. Number 3. Ford Mach 1. The Ford Mach 1 of 1971 through 1973 was the version of the most famous American sports car that the buyers of the early decade actually wanted, the last Mustang that was unambiguously a performance car, before Ford decided to base the Mustang II on the Pinto. The Mustang was one of the most recognizable American performance car nameplates in the world by 1971. It was the car that had created the entire pony car segment, and that every competitor in the category was still being measured against. Car and Driver's 1971 Mach 1 test produced a quarter mile of 14.3 seconds at 100.6 miles per hour, numbers that confirmed the Mach 1 was still a performance car in an era when that was becoming rare. The 1974 Mustang II arrived as a completely different vehicle on a completely different philosophy, making the 1973 Mach 1 the final expression of what the original Mustang had always been about. The Mach 1 is at number 3 because the Mustang was one of the most recognizable American performance car nameplates on the planet, and the Mach 1 was the version that delivered on it, before Ford's 1974 decision proved by the outrage it generated exactly how much that it mattered.
Number 2. Chevrolet Camaro Z28. Chevrolet sold 1,658,545 Camaros in the 1970s, more units than any other American performance model in the decade, by a margin that is difficult to overstate. The Z28 package, available throughout the decade in various configurations, gave buyers the performance identity within that sales volume that separated the Camaro from its mainstream counterparts. In 1979, the Camaro reached its all-time sales record at 282,571 units, a figure achieved by a model that had been in production in essentially the same body for 9 years. The second-generation Camaro of 1970 established a visual template so effective that Chevrolet had no commercial reason to change it. The Z28 was discontinued after 1974 as emissions regulations reduced its performance advantage, then returned in 1977 as buyers made clear they still wanted what it represented. Classic and Sports Car documented the late-decade Z28 at 8.6 seconds to 60 miles per hour and 0.85 G lateral acceleration, confirming it could still corner when most competitors had stopped trying. The Camaro Z28 is at number 2 because it was the muscle car that lasted. More units, more years, more buyers than any other performance car of the decade.
Number 1. Pontiac Firebird Trans Am. In 1976, Pontiac sold 46,701 Trans Ams. In 1977, Smokey and the Bandit was released, featuring a black and gold Pontiac Firebird Trans Am Special Edition with a full hood screaming chicken decal and snowflake wheels, driven by Burt Reynolds. In 1979, Pontiac sold 117,108 Trans Ams. That progression is the most precise available measure of what the Trans Am meant to the American buyer who grew up in the 1970s. The Trans Am had been available since 1969, but the 1970s were the decade that defined it. The Ram Air 400 and 455 engines gave the early decade cars genuine performance credentials. The Super Duty 455, available in 1973 and 1974, produced 290 horsepower at a moment when most of the competition had given up on performance entirely. Classic and Sports Car documented a 1973 Trans Am SD 455 running the quarter in the low 14-second range, faster than nearly every domestic alternative of the year. The movie gave the late-decade cars a cultural identity that 200 horsepower couldn't diminish. The Trans Am is at number 1 because no other American performance car of the 1970s, by sales, cultural footprint, or memory, came close to what Pontiac built and Burt Reynolds drove.